What's going on, guys? So today's subject is health anxiety, fear of death or death anxiety, the fear of being misdiagnosed, um, obviously fear of sickness and health issues and diseases. I struggled with this, guys, for 5 years, and it was probably the hardest thing I've ever overcome. Hell, I was able to actually get past panic disorder well before I was able to conquer my problem with health anxiety. And of course, even as a child, I was still very afraid of dying, but it seemed like something that was very distant. So it didn't constantly consume my life. I was a little bit more naive to it. I felt that I was going to be the first person to ever be 200 years old, and I know a lot of you guys can relate with that. But it became a real problem for me after I had my first big 6-hour-long panic attack. It was like death was brought, to my full awareness. I wasn't oblivious to it anymore. I wasn't naive to it anymore. Any bit of innocence that I had towards it was completely gone because I was traumatized when I had that first panic attack. I thought I was having a heart attack. I thought I was dying. And then I was terrified of having that feeling again. And when you're afraid of these things, when you're afraid of symptoms, when you're afraid of panic, what happens, right? It sucks, but they get worse. They magnify. They intensify more because anxiety fuels off that fear. And we really start to solidify this fear in our subconscious. And then we have a lot of other symptoms that manifest off of it, a lot of these other little mini scares and mini fears. It can go from you fearing heart disease to you fearing, a stroke or a blood clot or neurological things, you name it. You guys that have health anxiety, you know how it is, and I've talked about it on this channel. You will actually think that you have 100 different things within a span of a few months. And Googling symptoms is a huge problem. That also confirms that our symptoms are a disease, right? Because we're reading it right there. We're already in a negative state, and it seems to confirm that, right? And then our subconscious is always in the background just soaking all this up. So even whenever you try to accept and move past it, your subconscious is already so afraid that it's going to take a while to break down these triggers, these associations, these fears, right? And I'm outside today, guys. My kids are being loud inside and being rough and playing around, so I thought it'd be a little bit better to come out here and take advantage of the weather. Hopefully the lighting isn't super bad. But as far as getting past it, guys, it was rough because every time I would overcome one aspect of it, like cardiophobia and heart anxiety, I would have a symptom and then I'd go right back into the cycle because I didn't learn from each of these cycles until the end. I did learn my lesson. So once I finally gained acceptance, either through it just being one of those deals where I've had it for so long, I'm like, okay, I would have died by now, right? Or I just got some good reassurance from a doctor and I finally was able to let go. Finally had that one test that helped me. I still had my problem of fearing death and disease, so that was an elephant that was in the room, and until I made peace with that, anytime I felt anything, I was going to go back through the same cycle. And you add in all the bad behaviors that I didn't change each time I would go through these cycles, it drug out, and it took me 5 years. Sudden death was another huge fear of mine, but how I overcame it, guys, I had to change my perception on death and disease and dying. Change my perception on being misdiagnosed. One of my biggest problems was I was extremely irrational. How we went through this pandemic with COVID, there were many people that were, that's when their health anxiety started. I honestly think I probably would have been one of those that wouldn't have been super afraid of COVID whenever I had health anxiety, because I was more of the irrational thinker. I was the one who was thinking that I had something that I had the tiniest statistical chance of getting, right? Like having heart disease, having a heart attack whenever I'm 20 years old and I don't have any weight problems and I just don't look the part. I don't match, right? Basically almost a 0% chance that I would have a heart attack, but even if it was 0.0001%, I thought I was that 0.0001%. So part of me getting past this was finally realizing how miserable I was and how miserable I was for a long time, believing that I was that tiny statistic. So I wanted to go with the 99.999% chance that it was nothing. And it was a choice, and you have that choice. It's not easy, it's not natural, because you've been thinking that you're the tiny statistic for a long time, and you have this overwhelming fear of death and just what if. But you don't realize, like, you're not living anyways, right? We're so afraid of dying, but we're not even living whenever we deal with this fear of health problems constantly, and death, of course, inevitable. Our life is getting wasted. So another aspect, aside from just tired of worrying about being the tiny statistic and letting go of control, I became more afraid of not living and wasting my life and wasting time and the years going by. Oh my God, I've had this 1 year, then 2 years, 3, 4, is this going to be the rest of my life? I became more afraid of that and missing out on moments, missing out on what youth I had left, because whenever I was recovering, I was about 25, 26. So I still had some youngness in me, and I was afraid of losing out all my 20s, being afraid of something that probably wasn't going to happen for years and years and years, you know, unless there was just some horrible luck thing or whatever. But I was missing out on life. It was taking everything from me. It was robbing everything from me. So that's what I had to do. So you have to figure out a way to make peace. I'm not fully comfortable with death, you know what I mean? But I learned how to turn it into a healthy fear, and now I'm able to get more out of my life because, you know, I'm very appreciative of it. I'm not naive to death. So you're going to have a nice balance. You're going to know your time is limited here more than you did before. You're not going to be as innocent. But at the same time, you'll have this fuel and this motivation to get more out of your life, you know, each day. And guess what happens when you start being present and you focus on each day and trying harder today than you've ever tried, loving harder than you've ever loved today, and being more appreciative than you've ever been in your past today. Guess what? Yesterday gets foggy, tomorrow gets foggy, and what happens? You don't get all your innocence back, but a little bit of it comes back to you, and things start to slow down, and your life slows down. It was going by so quick whenever I had my bad anxiety, whenever I tried to become more present. Things started to slow down, and it makes sense. Because whenever we were children, we didn't worry too much about the past. We didn't worry too much about the future. And it seemed like it was a whole lifetime in itself, going from like 4 or 5 years old to you graduating. Think about that time. It seemed like it took forever. And now, as you know, young men and women, and guys, those of you in high school that are watching, or some people are actually younger, 10, 11, 12, dealing with this. When you get to be an adult and you have financial stuff, you've got career options, you got college, you're trying to figure your life out, things start to speed up, and then you add anxiety with it. It really takes off. So being present and appreciative and trying to get the most out of your life because you're afraid of not living, if that makes sense. So I didn't completely eliminate the fear, and you don't have to do that to get past this, right? Don't think that you just have to get to a point where I never fear it again. You have to just twist it a little bit. You have to change your perception, and overcoming anxiety is a lot about perception changes and finding something that works for you. And that worked for me. So that helped me tremendously. So I thought I'd share that. And you have to get to a point also where you basically have to be okay with there being a tiny chance that you have something. You almost have to be okay that there's a tiny, tiny chance that I'm being misdiagnosed, even though I've gone to 3 different doctors. But you have to get to a point to where you just realize, like, well, what am I going to do? Am I going to keep chasing this for 10 years? When do I let go? When do I stop getting tested? When do I stop going to the doctor? And I can't answer that for you. You have to answer that for yourself. But I hope this video gave you some type of value. I mean, I could talk hours and hours and hours about this, but I know you guys ain't gonna watch hours and hours and hours of content in one sitting. But those are some good points, I think, to help you. I finally decided to be okay with there being a 99.99% chance that there was anything wrong. Oh my God. And I realized that that was a choice, and I was just not willing to make that choice. I felt like I was risking my life making that choice, if you can believe it. Changing your fear, my fear turned into a healthier one. I was more afraid of not living and seeing my life fly by, and that motivated me to be present, and then that helped me slow my life down. And you know, now I don't have this crazy, irrational, obsessive fear of death and everything. I'm focused on now, you know, and that helped me tremendously. But there's so much more that goes into recovery. Lifestyle changes, anything from obviously nutrition, what you eat, your exercise. You need to be exercising because it's going to give you evidence that you are healthy and that nothing is wrong. So I think that that's something that you need to be doing, guys. But there's a lot more that goes into recovery, guys. I have a course, Elite Anxiety Bootcamp. I just put out another testimonial today. I try to put testimonials out on a regular basis so you guys can see that it is helping other people. But that course is going to be down below in the description and in the first pinned comment. Be a part of that today. Super affordable. I made it that way on purpose, and there's a ton of stuff actually packed into that, but you'll see all that on the page. But yeah, aside from that, guys, other resources, online therapy, some Facebook groups and stuff like that are down there, and I will be uploading hopefully tomorrow. But please like this video if you got value. Also, what else? Subscribe. I left that out until the very end. Subscribe if you are new, and be a part of the family. I make tons of videos like this. But I love you guys, and until next time, keep fighting.